The early morning sun cast soft rays over the Hilston family grave plot, illuminating rows of neatly arranged headstones. Johnny Hilston walked slowly, hands in his coat pockets, his gaze fixed ahead. It had been nearly 6 months since he had last seen his son, Tommy, a compassionate and vibrant 17-year-old who had lost his life in a tragic car accident. The grief was as fresh as ever, lingering like a shadow over Johnny's heart. Today was one of the rare days when Johnny found the strength to visit Tommy's grave. For a man known for his resilience in the operating room, the walk from the car to his son's headstone felt heavier than any surgery he'd ever performed. He wasn't sure if he'd ever truly recover. The memories of Tommy's laughter, his earnest desire to help others, and his unwavering optimism haunted him. Johnny's eyes traced the words etched on the headstone, words he had struggled to choose after his son's passing. Tommy Hilston, a friend to many, a light that will never dim. Lost in thought, Johnny didn't initially notice the 2 young boys huddled nearby, just a few feet away from Tommy's grave. They were quietly wiping their tears, their arms around each other. Johnny watched them for a moment, puzzled by their presence. The 2 boys, twins by the look of them, were dark-skinned with worn-out clothes and backpacks slung over their shoulders. They looked about Tommy's age, maybe a year younger. Something stirred within Johnny, curiosity, perhaps, or a faint sense of connection. Stepping closer, he cleared his throat gently. "Excuse me, boys. I didn't mean to intrude, but were you friends of Tommy?" The boys looked up, startled. They exchanged a glance before one of them, the taller of the 2, spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, sir. My name's Jack, and this is my brother, James. Tommy he was our friend." Johnny felt his chest tighten, his heart both aching and intrigued. He hadn't known Tommy to have close friends outside of school. He hadn't known much about his son's social life at all, truth be told, since work had often kept him away. But something about the boy's demeanor told Johnny there was more to this friendship than he understood. "What brings you both here today?" Johnny asked softly, trying to keep his voice steady. James, the shorter of the 2, wiped his eyes with his sleeve before replying, "Tommy, he helped us a lot, sir. We met him at the community center last year. He was teaching us. We wouldn't have gotten this far without him." Johnny's mind raced. He vaguely recalled Tommy mentioning a community center, but he hadn't paid much attention at the time. The idea of his son volunteering had seemed almost trivial in the whirlwind of his own demanding career. But now, standing before these 2 grieving boys, Johnny was beginning to see his son's life from a different perspective. Jack continued, his voice thick with emotion, "Tommy used to tutor us after school. We were struggling in school, and he helped us catch up. He even taught us math and science to prepare for a scholarship test. We're both trying to get into Brunswick Academy, and Tommy believed we could do it." The mention of Brunswick Academy struck Johnny hard. Brunswick was one of the most prestigious schools in the area, and getting in on scholarship was no small feat. That his son had been working with these boys, believing in them, supporting their dreams, it was a side of Tommy Johnny had never fully known. "Tommy was an amazing teacher, sir," James added, his voice wavering. "He told us we could be anything we wanted, as long as we worked hard and didn't give up." Johnny's throat tightened as he fought back tears. His son had been more than just a student, more than just his child. Tommy had been a mentor, a friend, and a source of hope to these boys. It was a revelation that shook Johnny to his core. He had known Tommy was a good kid, but hearing about the depth of his kindness from these young strangers gave Johnny a glimpse of a son he had only partially understood. "What about the scholarship test?" Johnny asked, trying to ground himself in something practical amid the emotional whirlwind. Jack's face fell slightly. It's coming up next month. Tommy helped us with everything, but without him, we don't know if we'll make it." A silence settled between them, thick with unspoken emotions. Johnny could feel the weight of the boys' sadness and the daunting challenge they now faced alone. They had lost more than a friend, they had lost a mentor who believed in them, someone who had given them the confidence to aim high. Johnny took a deep breath, feeling a sudden sense of purpose rise within him. For the first time in months, he felt connected to his son in a way that transcended grief. Tommy's legacy was alive in these boys, in their aspirations and the way they spoke about him. And perhaps, Johnny thought, helping them could be a way to honor his son's memory. "Listen, boys," Johnny said, his voice firm with newfound determination. "If Tommy believed in you, then so do I. Let me help you prepare for this scholarship test. I may not be the teacher Tommy was, but I'm here for you if you'll let me." Jack and James exchanged a glance, their faces brightening with hope. It was clear that Johnny's offer meant the world to them. For them, this was more than just a chance at a scholarship, it was a chance to fulfill the dreams that Tommy had ignited within them. As Johnny watched the boys' expressions change, he felt a spark of purpose rekindling within him. The grief, though still present, was joined by a new sense of responsibility. Perhaps by supporting Jack and James, he could keep Tommy's legacy alive, one step at a time. They spent the next hour at Tommy's grave, sharing stories of his kindness, his laughter, and his belief in the power of education. Each story the boys told painted a vivid picture of a young man driven by empathy, a young man who had made a lasting impact on everyone he touched. When they finally parted ways, Johnny's heart felt a little lighter. He had come to the grave that day expecting only sorrow, but he left with a renewed sense of purpose. One rooted in his son's memory and the dreams Tommy had helped plant in the hearts of two boys who had once felt forgotten. For Johnny Hilston, the journey was just beginning. The next day, Johnny Hilston found himself standing at the doors of the community center that Tommy had once frequented. The place was unremarkable from the outside, a simple brick building with a fading sign above the entrance. But now, Johnny saw it through new eyes, understanding it was more than just a building, it was where his son's heart had lived, a space where Tommy had poured his time, knowledge, and empathy. As he stepped inside, Johnny was greeted by the friendly bustle of children and teens studying, playing, and talking in groups. The center was alive with energy, a stark contrast to the emptiness that had filled Johnny's life since Tommy's passing. He felt a pang of regret for not visiting sooner, for not realizing sooner how much this place had meant to his son. A middle-aged woman with warm eyes and a kind smile approached him. "Can I help you, sir?" she asked, her tone gentle. Johnny cleared his throat, feeling slightly out of place. "Yes, I'm Johnny Hilston. Tommy Hilston's father." The woman's eyes softened with recognition. "Ah, Tommy. He was such a remarkable young man. Everyone here adored him." She introduced herself as Sarah, the center's coordinator. "Your son was one of the brightest, kindest souls we've ever had. He didn't just teach these kids, he believed in them." Johnny nodded, feeling a swell of pride mixed with regret. "I only recently learned about the impact he had here. I met two boys, Jack and James, at his grave yesterday. They told me about how Tommy helped them prepare for a scholarship test." Sarah smiled, her eyes lighting up. "Yes, Jack and James. Those boys adored Tommy. They looked up to him like a big brother. I remember how he'd spend hours tutoring them, going over every math problem and science concept until they understood. He believed they deserved a chance to reach their potential, no matter their background." A deep ache settled in Johnny's chest as he realized just how much he had missed in his son's life. "I'd like to continue what Tommy started," he said, his voice steady with determination. "I want to help Jack and James prepare for that test. It's the least I can do." Sarah's face lit up with gratitude. "That would mean so much to them, Mr. Hilston. Tommy's passing has been hard on everyone here, especially the kids. They need someone who believes in them as much as he did." Later that day, Johnny arranged to meet Jack and James at the community center for their first study session. The boys arrived, looking both hopeful and nervous. They hadn't expected Johnny to follow through, but his presence reassured them. In his own quiet way, Johnny was stepping into the role Tommy had left behind. They settled into a corner of the center's study area, where Johnny spread out the materials he had brought: textbooks, notebooks, and practice tests. He wasn't a teacher, but he was determined to do his best. As they began to review math problems, he was struck by the intensity with which the boys approached their work. Their determination was evident, fueled by the memory of Tommy's encouragement. "Tommy always said we could do it," Jack murmured, focusing on a particularly tricky equation. "He believed we could get that scholarship." Johnny felt a lump form in his throat. "Then let's make sure you do," he replied. For Tommy. Over the next few weeks, Johnny met Jack and James regularly. Despite his initial uncertainty, he found himself enjoying the process. Each session brought back memories of Tommy's kindness, his quiet strength, and his belief in the power of education. With each problem solved, each concept mastered, Johnny felt closer to his son. It was as though Tommy's spirit lingered, guiding them. But it wasn't just academic challenges the boys faced. One evening, after a particularly productive session, Johnny noticed Jack looking unusually withdrawn. "Is everything all right, Jack?" Johnny asked gently. Jack hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir. It's just, some of the kids at school, they make fun of us. They say we'll never make it to Brunswick, that we're just the twins from the wrong side of town." Johnny's heart clenched at the boys' struggles. He saw the weariness in their eyes, the impact of society's biases weighing on them. He felt a surge of protectiveness, a fierce determination to prove those doubters wrong. Tommy had seen their potential, and now, so did he. "Listen, Jack, James," Johnny said firmly, meeting both their gazes. "You are capable of incredible things. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. You have every right to dream big, to aim for Brunswick, and beyond." The boys looked at him, their expressions a mix of gratitude and resolve. They were no longer just two kids with a distant goal, they had someone in their corner, someone willing to fight for them just as Tommy had. As the weeks passed, Johnny found himself growing increasingly invested in Jack and James's journey. He saw them as more than just students, they were carrying Tommy's legacy forward. Their successes felt like victories for Tommy, and their challenges fueled Johnny's resolve. One evening, after a long study session, Jack looked up at Johnny and said, "Mr. Hilston, I think Tommy would be proud of you. You're doing what he would have wanted." The words hit Johnny like a wave, filling him with both pride and sorrow. He missed Tommy with an intensity that hadn't lessened, but he felt his son's presence in every word, every equation, every hope and dream he was now nurturing in these boys. As the scholarship exam approached, Johnny could feel the anticipation building. Jack and James had worked tirelessly, overcoming every challenge with resilience. But Johnny knew the stakes were high, not just for the boys, but for him as well. This journey had become more than just a tribute to Tommy, it had become his own path to healing. The night before the exam, Johnny gathered with Jack and James for one final review. As they wrapped up, he looked at them, his heart full. "No matter what happens tomorrow, you've made Tommy and me incredibly proud. Just do your best. That's all anyone can ask." The boys nodded, their faces a mixture of nerves and excitement. As they left, Johnny felt a deep sense of peace. For the first time since Tommy's passing, he felt a purpose beyond his grief. He was no longer just a father mourning his son, he was a mentor, a supporter, a believer in the dreams his son had inspired. And as he closed his eyes that night, he whispered a quiet promise to Tommy, "I'll keep your light alive, son. I'll make sure they see what you saw in them." The morning of the scholarship exam dawned clear and bright. Johnny could hardly sleep the night before, his thoughts drifting between memories of Tommy and hopes for Jack and James. He felt a strange mix of anxiety and anticipation, knowing how much this day meant to the boys. For weeks, they had poured their hearts into preparing, overcoming academic challenges and self-doubt alike. He picked them up early, taking care to ensure they had a hearty breakfast before the long day ahead. Jack and James, usually animated and lively, were quiet that morning. Their nerves were palpable, their eyes betraying the pressure they felt to succeed, not just for themselves, but to honor the promise they had made to Tommy. "Are you boys ready?" Johnny asked as he parked in front of the exam center. Jack took a deep breath, nodding. "Yeah. We've done everything we can." James added, his voice a bit shaky, "Tommy used to say, just focus on doing your best. Don't worry about what others say." Johnny smiled, feeling a pang of pride mixed with sorrow. He was right, boys. Just go in there, stay calm, and give it your all. Whatever happens, you've already made him proud. They nodded, taking strength from his words. Johnny watched them walk into the building, their heads held high. He stayed in the car, watching until they disappeared from view, feeling a lump in his throat. He had done all he could to prepare them, but now, it was in their hands. As the hours passed, Johnny found himself pacing around the nearby park, unable to sit still. He thought about how much Jack and James had grown over the past weeks, how their confidence had blossomed with each small victory. He had seen Tommy's influence in every step they took, each instance of perseverance, and it brought him comfort. But it also filled him with a renewed sense of loss, a reminder that his son was no longer there to witness this moment. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the boys emerged from the exam center. Johnny hurried over, his heart pounding. The expressions on their faces were unreadable, a mixture of exhaustion and relief. "Well?" he asked, trying to keep his tone light. Jack and James exchanged a look before Jack spoke up. "It was tough. But we think we did okay. We gave it everything, just like you and Tommy told us to." Johnny placed a hand on each of their shoulders, smiling with pride. "That's all anyone can ask. No matter the result, you've proven yourselves. You've shown more resilience and dedication than most adults I know." The boys' faces brightened at his words, a hint of relief breaking through their exhaustion. The three of them headed to a nearby diner to celebrate the end of a long journey. Johnny couldn't help but notice how much lighter the boys seemed, as though a weight had been lifted off their shoulders. For the first time, he felt the stirrings of hope that they might actually achieve what they had set out to do. In the days that followed, life returned to a semblance of normalcy. Johnny resumed his work at the hospital, though his thoughts often drifted back to Jack and James, wondering how they were coping with the wait for their results. He missed their study sessions, the quiet determination they had brought into his life. The boys had become a lifeline for him, a bridge between his grief and a newfound purpose. Then, one late afternoon, his phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Answering it, Johnny heard the excited voice of James on the other end. "Mr. Hilston. We did it." James practically shouted, his words tumbling over each other in excitement. "We got into Brunswick. Both of us. We got the scholarship." Johnny's heart soared, a joy he hadn't felt in a long time surging through him. "That's incredible, boys. I knew you could do it. We couldn't have done it without you," Jack added, his voice equally filled with emotion. "Thank you, Mr. Hilston. For everything. And for believing in us, like Tommy did." As Johnny hung up, he felt a wave of emotions wash over him, pride, joy, and a deep sense of fulfillment. He had lost his son, but in supporting Jack and James, he had kept Tommy's spirit alive. He knew Tommy would have been overjoyed for his friends, proud of what they had accomplished. That night, Johnny visited Tommy's grave. As he stood there in the cool evening air, he felt closer to his son than he had in months. "They did it, Tommy," he whispered, a tear slipping down his cheek. "Your friends did it. I wish you were here to see it, but I know you'd be so proud." He stood in silence for a while, his heart full, before heading home. It was a quiet victory, a moment shared between a father and the memory of his son. But for Johnny, it was enough. He had fulfilled a part of Tommy's dream, carrying forward his legacy in the lives of two young boys who now had a brighter future. As the weeks went by, Johnny continued to support Jack and James as they transitioned into their new school. He was there for them, offering guidance and encouragement, watching them navigate their new environment with the confidence that Tommy had instilled in them. The bond between them grew stronger, and Johnny found himself healing in ways he hadn't thought possible. But one day, while visiting the community center, Johnny received an unexpected surprise. Sarah, the center's coordinator, approached him with a proposal. "Johnny, we've been inspired by what you've done for Jack and James," she said. "We're thinking of starting a mentorship program here at the center, in memory of Tommy. A program that pairs local kids with mentors who believe in their potential, just like Tommy did. Would you be willing to lead it?" Johnny felt his heart swell. The idea of a mentorship program in Tommy's name filled him with a deep sense of purpose. "I'd be honored, Sarah. I can't think of a better way to remember Tommy." The program took shape over the following months, with Johnny at the helm. Volunteers from the community, including some of Johnny's colleagues at the hospital, joined as mentors, offering their time and knowledge to the kids at the center. Jack and James became the program's first success story, often returning to help the younger kids, sharing their experiences and encouraging them to aim high. Through this program, Johnny found a way to channel his grief into something meaningful. He saw Tommy's legacy in every child who walked through those doors, each one a testament to his son's kindness and belief in others. And as he watched Jack and James thrive at Brunswick, he knew that he had not only honored his son's memory but had found a path to healing his own heart. Johnny had come full circle, transforming his sorrow into hope, his loss into a legacy that would touch countless lives. And though Tommy was gone, his light continued to shine, illuminating the lives of those he had left behind.